Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back again for part 2 of our Warbreaker reread slash read along. So, as always, this is going to have complete and total spoilers for part 2 of Warbreaker. We're going to cover the middle section of the book, the part that I like to consider to be Act 2 in this 3-act structure setup that we have. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and talk about that in full spoilers, and I'm going to kind of give a little description and talk about my thoughts during the time when I was originally reading it and some of my opinions on, rereading it again. So, yeah, make sure you leave your comments in the comment section below. Try to keep your comments contained to, your opinions at this point in time of the story, not, the third part or anything like that. So, yeah, as always, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, in this one, I want to start off. I want to kind of break it down by characters, characters. It makes it a little easier to kind of talk about. So, first off, I want to start off talking about Ciri and Susebron. So, despite the story really starting off with them, we kind of notice around this part, at least I did, that they're kind of being shoveled off and less main character, they're kind of fading into the background a little bit. That's kind of something I really noticed about this part, especially since their entire story arc in this part of the book is actually very small because they are really just on fact-finding missions, really. So after Ciri finds out about Susebron's lack of a tongue and everything, she eventually teaches him how to read and write, and he already kind of understood, some of it because he had those children books and stuff, so it was just fairly easy to kind of teach him. He just needed to, that final step or whatever to help him really be able to read and write. So now they can fully communicate, and they're always now every night having these clandestine conversations and stuff, and no one knows what they're talking about, obviously. And so they're basically both teaching each other everything. She's teaching him everything about, life that he doesn't know and just general stuff. And she's basically learning more about Halandrin, about the history and all this kind of stuff from him, at least far as what he knows. So she kind of learns that he is fairly loyal to his priest. He believes everything that they've told him his entire life because really he has no reason not to. So it's pretty understandable. But she tries to impress upon Susebron that this is kind of a not so awesome situation. You're more or less a figurehead. You're kind of a puppet. And he doesn't want to believe it because, it goes against everything he's known his entire life. So that's pretty understandable, I think. But Ciri wants to learn more, and Susebron is kind of open to it. He's like, so if you can learn more information or whatever, and you bring me better evidence and everything, then I'll start to believe you, and we'll start talk about, options and things. So she decides she's going to go and talk to the return that was nice to her previously, and that is Lightsong. So she goes and kind of tries to set up this situation. She tries to be really subtle about it and tries to get him to tell her stuff, but he just kind of sees through it. Well, he kind of thinks that she's being manipulative or whatever, like everyone else is in court. But then he kind of realized, no, she's pretty genuine. So he basically gives her some really good advice on how to basically deal with court. Her whole innocent act and stuff like that, and her whole being ignorant of stuff like that. Even though she is innocent and she is ignorant of their ways and stuff, the other people in court won't take it that way. They will take it as a feint. They would think that she's being politically savvy or something like that, and is deliberately maneuvering herself. So Lightsong basically tells her this isn't a good idea. This isn't very trustworthy or whatever. You got to kind of play the game a little better. So she gets a little bit of that advice, and I thought that was an interesting idea because it's clearly just all sorts of interesting little politicking that goes on in the court of the gods. And on top of that, he basically advises her all kinds of entertainment or whatever is available to them. They can have storytellers and all this kind of stuff show up. So the storyteller that he eventually has come talk to Ciri is Hoyd. So we get our nice little Hoyd cameo here, and Hoyd gives her the history of Halandrin and how it all worked and stuff. At least the publicly known histories. Some of the stuff is we learn some stuff, but we still have questions and stuff. Ciri definitely still has questions. It doesn't explain everything she wants to know. It doesn't explain everything that we want to know. So it's just interesting. But in my opinion, this is probably not nearly enough Hoyd. Like, this is like a very small kind of Hoyd cameo thing, and I just, Hoyd is awesome. There's never enough Hoyd, so I would really like more wit in this story if I could have it, but whatever. So it was kind of interesting though to see that she kind of is learning a little bit, little by little, little by little, but we kind of notice that that's kind of where it kind of fades off though. She kind of uses that information and like is reluctantly like, oh, I didn't really learn anything, I still need to know more, and she like takes his advice to heart and stuff, and she basically goes back and like reevaluate. And that's pretty much where we kind of leave Siri and Suzebron. They don't do a lot in the third bit. There's just a lot of connection between them. There's some chemistry building and stuff. Like, their conversations are really good and stuff. So it's really just the development of their actual relationship. Not this, betrothed, set up, predestined relationship, but like they're now actually developing a true relationship. And that's kind of cool. So, speaking of Lightsong, because that's who she went and spoke to, I want to talk about Lightsong next. So Lightsong also doesn't do like a great deal of stuff in this middle section of the book. He's still a fairly minor part, but his part is definitely growing. You can kind of sense it growing. He's asking all these questions about his nature as a return to his past life and everything. Like, he's starting to really, really get obsessed with it. Like, he's even to the point where he's not doing as good as he used to at cultivating this reputation of being useless and lazy and stuff like that. So it's not working out quite the way, it was before. His curiosity and stuff is like highly peaked on everything, and he realizes he has all these skills and these random different activities that he never has tried before, never would have assumed he had these abilities. Like, he can juggle and stuff, and he has a very inquisitive mind. He's very good at math, and he's a sailor, and he like has no context for knowing any of that stuff since his return. So it's clearly stuff coming from his past life. So it's a really interesting like fact-finding thing that he's doing. He's just trying random activities and stuff and learning different things. And at the same time, he's basically avoiding Blushweaver and like all the political maneuvering she's trying to drag him into. So while he's discovering this stuff, he's basically just like staying away from her and like learning this stuff. But then he kind of realizes, like, when he learns that he's very inquisitive and stuff, or he learns that he is inquisitive, because when Vasher broke into one of the gods' temples, he became basically obsessed with investigating the situation and like asking all these questions and stuff, and like really wants to know. So it's just this natural inquisitive side that he has always had before his return and stuff is starting to manifest itself now. So he's, of course, just has so many more questions. He's questioning everything. He's just wondering so much about who he was, and he's having these dreams and stuff that are based, like, we know that they're clearly prophecies. We know that they're clearly like glimpses of the past and future and stuff like that, just because it, meta-textual kind of thing. But he still, is very unsure. Like, he's seen these battles and stuff. He's seen true images in the paintings people are bringing him as, offerings and stuff. And he's still just like, at this point, he's basically in denial. Because all of this stuff is kind of telling him, you may not be like a god in the way that you seem to be perceiving it, but you clearly have like divine attributes or some sort of divine affinity. Like, basically some of this stuff is legit. Like, granted, you probably shouldn't be worshipped as a god, but people should pay attention to these things, your interpretations and your dreams and stuff, especially you. So I thought that was a lot of fun. It's like Lightsong is like, he's so in denial that he's literally ignoring these warnings that are in front of him. And I think that's really, really interesting. So that's really the bulk of what Lightsong is doing in part 2. Like, we kind of leave him when he's basically still trying to figure out what's going on with the break-in. He's trying to, because there's some information, he questioned some of the priests in the temple, and they basically lied to him, and he realized it and stuff, and that like got him excited and made him want to investigate even more. So we just kind of leave him on this curiosity adventure where he's trying to figure stuff out and trying to learn more. So that's when we got to go over and jump over to Vivenna, who is now clearly becoming the main protagonist in the story. Like, we're kind of shifting over to more of her story because she's like the bulk of this part 3, and she's going to be the bulk of the story going forward. But before we get into Vivenna, I want to say about Lightsong. At this point in the story, I was like, just purely on a metatextual level, was like, of course, you're going to be the most godlike, God-returned person ever, because you're just in that position. You kind of have that main character syndrome thing, or one of the main character things. You're one of the main characters syndrome thing kind of happening. So, like, of course, just by the fact that you have all of this page time, you're going to be the one that gives us a lot of this contextual information about Returned and Awakened and all this stuff. So I just knew immediately. It was like, yes, of course, you're going to figure out your past life, and we're probably going to learn who you were by the end of the book and stuff. So a lot of this stuff felt very natural to me during the time I was first reading it. I was like, of course that's going to happen. But I was still so into it. I was like, oh, maybe he was an investigator. Maybe it's this, maybe it's this. It was just a lot of fun trying to guess the stuff about Light Song's past at the same time he was. And then, like, at this point, I started to feel like maybe other people around him knows, you know, his past and stuff. So it was starting to, like, open up those suspicions. So it was a lot of fun. I really, really dig Light Song's part. It's like every time Light Song is, like, on the page, he's just a lot of fun. He's just a great character. And I really think that Light Song is kind of, no, actually, Vasher, actually. So I'm going to make this point before I talk about Vivenna and Vasher. I think Vasher is Brandon's example of Kelsier if he was purely righteous. Like, Kelsier is only a good guy in Mistborn because of context. And Brandon has even said, in any other context, Kelsier would be a bad guy. So I feel like this is the same kind of thing, but, like, reversed or inverted. It's like Vasher comes off as a villain and, like, untrustworthy and uncouth and all this stuff, but he's, like, incredibly righteous and really, really good guy and, like, super helpful and just a genuinely, like, good person and stuff. So it's really interesting. Like, he's not charismatic. He doesn't have, like, the charisma that Kelsier has. He can't, you know, silk speak people into doing what he wants them to do and all that kind of stuff. He's just, like, the complete opposite. And it's just a really interesting setup because in the situation where he is basically the good guy, he is perceived as a bad guy. So that's kind of a fun little dynamic between the two when you start to really pay attention to Brandon's writing. So, Vivenna and Vasher. So at this time, Vivenna is basically still going on with Denth and Tongfa. They're still going to their different meetings, trying to stir up stuff, trying to thwart some of the war efforts of the Halandran and stuff, and trying to just basically give Idris as much of a chance as possible. And as they keep going around, she's starting to get a little more used to this stuff. She's starting to get used to, like, the crowds and stuff, working her way around the crowd, seeing all these colors and stuff isn't as jarring to her and stuff. And she's, like, just calm and all this stuff. And they kind of make a comment, like, oh, you're getting used to this stuff. And then she, like, recognizes that she is, but she also hates it, and, like, she resents the fact that she's getting used to it and stuff, and she hates the way, like, her people are, because they're going against their religion and stuff, and the way they had to move there, and some of them are doing stuff that they wouldn't do under Austrian stuff, and, like, so she's kind of judging them, but then hating Halandran for putting them in this situation to do that, when it's situations that is not these people's fault. It's really not their fault. They're just trying to live and trying to survive. But her upbringing and her, you know, her piety and stuff, their religion and everything is just causing her to be incredibly judgmental of these people and really arrogant. And it's a really interesting thing when Denth kind of points that out to her, and she's just like, and then she kind of realizes she's ended up in this thing where, like, she's so hard about her humility, because that's the nature of the religion. That's one of the tenets. You have to be humble and stuff. But she's, like, taking her humility to a place where it has become arrogance. It's like, I'm more humble than you, so I'm better than you. Like, you know, it's that kind of thing. Anything you put on the pedestal can become a marker of arrogance or, like, better than and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting dichotomy to show that happening with her. And then Ciri is just, like, completely the opposite, because she wasn't so hardline brought up into all of that stuff. So I just think these dynamics that are being created is a lot of fun. It's really interesting. And it's really interesting that, like, when they're having this conversation, when she's realizing, like, how judgmental she's been and, like, just her attitudes and all this stuff, I'm like, yeah, Def, like, yeah, you're right. And, like, and Tongfa is fun and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm really trusting these dudes and stuff. Like, yeah, they looking out for her. They, like, good big brother mercenary people and stuff. Like, I'm just, like, all on their side and stuff. So, like, I just completely trusted them when I first read it. Like, I just 100% trusted them. I had no suspicions at all, except I figured there was something more to it, because they know too much and they're too nice, and they just seem to have this kind of perspective on the world that made them feel very much not like other mercenaries, obviously. So it kind of, like, my hackles was up. I was a little suspicious, but I was very much trusting them. So it's a really fun twist that we get at the end of this part 2. So while Vivenna is back at their hideout kind of thing, she's just chilling while they're off doing other stuff. She ends up getting kidnapped by Vasher, because Vasher thinks she's, you know, on their team. She's actually working with them to do the stuff that they're doing, which she is. It's totally correct. But she doesn't realize that they're actually kind of working against her actual goals. But they're doing it in such a way that she doesn't recognize it and doesn't realize it and stuff. So she finds this out later. But first, Vasher kidnaps her and he ties her up and just leaves her in this house, like this like abandoned house, like another hideout or something, as he goes off and go do something. He basically like, don't do anything or I'll kill you. Because he's sick and tired of everything she's doing is like undoing the stuff that he's trying to do, but she doesn't realize it's happening. So he's just basically trying to stow her away. And this is when she awakens for the first time. She remembers one of the commands and stuff that was said, and she eventually gets herself unbound from the rope by way of awakening it. And she uses that opportunity to escape. So she runs away from where Vasher is, and she basically makes her way back to the hideout where everyone else was. So she, go find back, with her friends and stuff. And when she gets there, it sucks because she basically interrupts them in the middle of like a torture session kind of thing. They turned the place over. They killed her friend that came with her from Idris, who basically was as good as her betrothed husband and stuff. Like they killed him because they thought she figured out that they were not on her side and she ran. So they tortured her friend and killed him and like killed some of the other people that was her allies and stuff, trying to find her and stuff. And then like, so the whole cover's blown. She realizes all the work that they've had her do is really just agitating the Halandrans in order to make sure that they go to war instead of just trying to disrupt their stuff. Because she thought the war was completely and totally inevitable. And the only way she could do anything to help Idris is to just try to slow them down and try to, throw monkey wrenches as much as possible. But in reality, she's poking the bear. She's actively poking the bear because they probably wouldn't have even thought about going to, well, they were thinking about it, but they probably wouldn't have gone to war naturally because it's not enough of a benefit for what they'd be trying to do. So they weren't, so little does she know, she's literally helping the opposite side that she wants to help. So it's a really cool twist. She learns that, and then they basically are about to either kill her or just tie her back up. And like as she's like getting restrained and stuff, and they're like all like huddling around her, she remembers from a previous conversation she had. And I love the conversation where she basically gets cussed out by Jewel because she thinks because Jewel is a drab, like her life is terrible and stuff. And like she she basically like tries to sympathize with her, like, I'm so sorry for what they did to you, blah, blah, blah. Completely disrespecting the fact that she willingly gave up her breath to the God King because she needed the food and stuff for her family and everything. And just like, she takes so much pride in what she did and who she is and like her family and like how they got benefit from it and everything. Like so it just comes off as this huge insult. Like, why are you pitying me for something that I consider to have been an honor and all this stuff? So I just like that too. That was another bit of like shattering her arrogance and stuff. I thought that was a lot of fun. And during that time though, they were just kind of in the hideout, and she overheard the command phrase to control the lifeless that 10th and Dogfight and Jewel always are running around with. So she basically uses the commands the lifeless to attack them, and while they're distracted trying to fight it because the lifeless is actually pretty skilled, she makes her way out and run. So she escapes and stuff, and she basically at this point realizes she needs to disappear. So she like goes to the slums and tries to find the deepest, darkest alley and like just try to go completely disappear into the city and everything. And she just starts this huge, terrible, like sad journey where she's now, well, not at this moment, but she is sliding straight towards rock bottom in a way that I don't think I've ever seen happen in a book. That's just like, wow, it's impressive, it's well done, and it's a pure exercise in stripping down a character so you can remake them and rebuild them into the true protagonist that they need to be. Because that's clearly what Brandon is doing, because at this point, the entire book shifts over to Vivenna being the primary protagonist. Like, and you can just totally feel it from the way all these things happen. She got the bulk of the story, she got the most interesting part of the story, this part of the book, and the biggest ramification. So our two biggest mysteries are like kind of coming together. So now we're going to go ahead and jump into part 3 where a whole bunch of other stuff happens. So yeah, that was part 2. I really enjoyed it a lot. I like it so much. I had so many questions about so many little things when I first read it. I was very confused just about the world itself, because based on the information we get from Hoyt and like the other stuff, I'm like, this world must be very young. Like the planet itself has to be very young. And just the nature of it, I kind of wonder, because like they kind of imply that there's like other continents, or like even like the other side of the continent is not their, you know, rule or whatever. So there's probably other civilizations. Well, there's clearly other civilizations like that treat Return very differently all over the place. Some places they treat them like vampires and stuff like that, and it's just all kinds of really interesting stuff. So at this point, I was really way more into the world building until the betrayal happened. When the betrayal happened, my ears like pricked up and stuff. I'm like, oh my god, because like I said, I completely bought it. I bought that they were friends. I bought they were just, you know, kindly mercenaries and stuff. So when that twist happened, all my attention just like shifted over, because the romance stuff was all right, but it wasn't really holding my attention like that. So when this happened, I was just all in at that point. It was just like a sprint to the finish. So that's kind of what we're going to do. I think this Friday we're probably going to talk about the third part of this book and kind of wrap up Warbreaker and kind of talk about it, you know, even more, and probably do like just a general Nalthvis kind of awakening kind of breath kind of. I don't know. I might just do like a really rambly video where I just spew all my thoughts about this planet in the Cosmere. That'll be fun. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel to check that out. Let me know in the comments down below. What did you think about the story at this point? How did you feel about this part 2, the second act, where everything is kind of set up now? Now we can kind of get to the point where we're going to start the crescendo, start going up before we get down to the big, you know, the finale and all this stuff. So what did you think of the story at this point? Let me know about that in the comments down below. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.